Welcome to Canonymous. I'd like to introduce you to Lisa Robinson, a Pickering counselor who really needs smarter people around her. The other day, she penned an op-ed saying she does not support the concept of Black History Month, and you can imagine how that went with a lot of people. Not well. Some demanding an apology and others demanding that she just be kicked off the council altogether. Now, we're going to take a look at her op-ed, don't worry. And having already read some of it, I don't think she's racist. I do think she's stupid though. And no offense to her, but you're a white blonde lady living in Pickering. It's a nice area, by the way. Pretty white area. For those that don't know, the demo is slowly changing, but that's how it's been for a while for anybody not familiar with Pickering. It is impossible for you, Lisa, to truly understand the issues of another race, which isn't even technically a bad thing or even a wrong thing. Like, I'll never understand what it's like to be a white lady. It's just not possible. I can sympathize for the plight of other races, but I won't know what it's like to be a brown guy or an Asian guy. But I can sympathize, and I can understand that I won't understand what it's like. Anyways, let's take a look at this thing that she wrote. We are amidst Black History Month. Celebrations plus more celebrations. This is all you hear. Politician after politician attempting to get Afro-Canadian votes. Clearly no one edited this, which is probably why we've just started and it's missing letters. She did say one thing correct though, and that's politicians looking to buy the Black vote. But that's what politicians do. They're trying to buy everyone's vote. I will say I think most Black people should be voting. Nay, I think most people in general should be voting with who they truly think is going to benefit them and the overall Canadian society overall, and not simply just go with that one particular party that you always go with. Back then it was history. Yes, mistakes were made. Yes, mistakes at both ends of the color spectrum can be noted. The key here is why in this modern age are we so driven by color of skin instead of the human element. Now, that's something I can agree with. I do think race can become too big of an issue. At the end of the day, we are all the same. But all that being said, she lacks the awareness how Black history itself was torn away from Black people when they were brought here through slavery. The inability to look back at our African roots. The only thing that Black Americans, Black Canadians can look back at on for our triumphs is through the tragedy of those 400 years or so. This isn't to make white people feel bad, though I do understand why it can and does, but that's not its purpose. I think the problem she's got here is that she thinks that Black history puts her down when it's not meant to do this. It's actually meant to make Black people feel uplifted. I think a lot of people think and misconstrue Black history as some sort of slight to white people. It's not. So many times, especially in the past, much less now, we've watched, like a lot less now, but we've watched Disney princesses and they were all white. We watched superheroes and they were all white. Obviously, things are starting to change and not for the better because these Marvel movies have sucked lately. But you needed to make sure that Black people, Black kids especially, didn't forget their roots. And also white kids to not forget kind of what has happened, but not to feel bad about it. Take Germany, for example. It too has its atrocities, but it does not shy away from them. In fact, it embraces it. It makes sure that the whole nation is aware that this is unacceptable and we are not to repeat this again, while also teaching the next generation to remember this and do not do this again. They are okay with their scars. They understand what happened and they're able to move past it without feeling completely ashamed by it to the point where they ignore it, because they know they have to learn from history. Why doesn't this lady also realize that? I say the human element as we are all people. In the race to equality is not the celebration of one race over another in itself racist, and for those not of that race, hypocritical. 100%, you should not do this, and I hate when I see it. Especially nowadays where it's not cool, I don't think, to be pushing down white people to prop up anybody else. Where they want to essentially not allow white people to apply for scholarships. I can understand a little bit of diversity for certain jobs in here and there. Sometimes that's needed. Just so other kids can see the potential of what they could be in, someone that represents their look and skin color. But it's stuff like I'll see at my work, there was a scholarship application. And it basically said, if you are visible minority, you can apply. If you're disabled, you can apply. If you're female, you can apply. If you're LGBTQ+, you can apply. Basically, if you weren't white, you could apply. But obviously they can't just write that in paper, but that's basically what it said. You can't create equality by pushing down one race to uplift another. That's obvious. But that being said, a lot of the times as well, seeing your people basically not get the privilege of being first in line for everything, and everybody else sort of coming up to match and sort of vying for first place can seem like oppression when you've had privilege your whole life and not even realize it. Now, before anyone goes getting offended, take off the offended cap and put on the thinking cap. Someone not too long ago of status in the community and of color dared to call me white privilege. Really? If that's not racist, if that's not a racist statement, I don't know what is. Okay, so I'm just gonna define white privilege here real quick. I know it can be used as an attack. It really shouldn't be, but it is not getting a bonus check at the end of every year. That's not how it works. Alright, it simply just means that when someone looks at you, you're not prejudged into being a threat to them. Okay? They're not prejudging you with the I need to keep my eye on this person, or that this person is going to be lazy and useless, or a threat in any kind of way. That's what the privilege part is. It's not actually like a monetary thing. In fact, one of the things I hate a lot of the times is that I wish people wouldn't look at race and they would start looking more at your tax bracket, at your income class. That's because your income makes you, whether you're white or black or whatever, if you're poor and white, you probably have a lot more in common with a poor black person when it comes to living standards, what you can afford, where you can go, what you can eat, etc. Versus a rich person who might be Irish, right? And then we'll have another white person who's also Irish, but one rich and one poor. Yeah, culturally you might have similarities, but your lifestyle is not anywhere near the same. So she doesn't understand what white privilege actually means because she doesn't even realize that as a white blonde lady, she has maximum privilege. And what that means is that people don't look at you as a threat. They probably look at you as attractive. In fact, they probably look at you as the ideal beauty standard. That's the privilege. This same person is to champion equality across the board, but it seems that due to the limited intellect, they confuse the meaning of equality with the attempt to denounce in the name of punishing everyone for their psychological insecurities stemming from a race. This scares me. I'm not prejudiced nor discriminatory. I have friends of all nationalities, and as an elected official, I treat everyone equal and without bias. I really wish I was someone that she knew, because I want to understand that conversation that happened after, you with your so-called diverse friends. Don't worry, I have black friends, basically. No, but seriously. Again, I say this because I don't think she's racist or discriminatory. I think she's just stupid. I think you shouldn't attack black people. I know you're not trying to, but a lot of people will think you are. The same way black history is not an attack on white people, but you seem to think it's against white people. Now, I believe your approach in this is a little unintelligent. There are better ways to spark a discussion on this topic, one that I would love to actually be a part of and could probably even argue both sides. But as it currently stands, not really. Now, back to being called privileged. How does the color of my skin make me privileged? I have worked hard for everything I own. I endure economic hardships just like the many reading this, like the many of all colors. That last paragraph that I just read even comes off very much like it's, very personal to you, that you feel attacked for being called white privilege, not even fully understanding what that means and thinking it means you don't work hard. Nobody said you didn't work hard. Again, white privilege doesn't work like that. Instead, listen, here's how your prejudgments are going to be kind of laid out, because the media kind of controls the message, right? So in a lot of shows, less now as they seem to be making white people the enemies, but beforehand, which has already been established, the white savior in all of these shows, while black people were the gangsters, they were the poor people in all of these shows. Because you know what I mean, your race isn't seen as some sort of liability on society. That's the privilege. Being a white lady, and that's not your fault, but you're not aware that you don't know. So much so that my own employer, city-elect, biasly, and with extreme prejudice, cut my pay for 90 days for exercising my freedom of speech over a comment I made in regards to feeling like my counsel was threatening me like a modern-day slave. I mean, one, freedom of speech, I think you should be able to say whatever you want about how stupid it sounds. But secondly, just stay away from the word slave or black or anything in between. Because the problem you have here, Lisa, is you can't compare yourself and say, oh, I feel like a modern day slave because my pay got suspended. Slaves were burned, they were murdered, they were tortured, they were raped. If you see the movie Amistad, which is based on true events, when they couldn't feed all the ones they were bringing over on the ships, they would tie them all together, attach it to a big rock and toss it into the ocean, and then just watch all of them fall into the ocean and drown. They didn't even say, well, we'll just set these ones free. They let them die. You did not go through anything of the sort. Let's interject here with a video where she gets suspended for making trans comments, because I feel like we just need a little bit more context about kind of how she handles herself as a councilwoman.
A Pickering City Councilor has been dealt a 60-day pay suspension after the Integrity Commissioner found that 3 motions she promoted were homophobic and transphobic, the first of which set out to ban children from drag story time and pride parades.
To protect children and their childhood innocence from live adult performances.
Councillor Lisa Robinson's suspension stems from this speech outside the Durham District School Board in May, where she also discussed her motion which would have blocked schools from flying the pride flag.
So as you can see from that, she's no stranger to those levels of controversy, but even what she was saying, I don't really disagree with fully. Like, I don't think any school should be flying any flags that's not a Canadian flag. It shouldn't be a BLM flag. It shouldn't be an LGBTQ flag or a Palestinian flag or any flag that isn't a Canadian flag. Your job is to teach the facts to the kids. Nothing more, nothing less. Just do that. I also agree with the story time drag issue. I don't really think you should be having kids present to that. To my understanding, a drag show is sexual by nature, so it seems a bit weird to me. Maybe I'm wrong about that, maybe I'm not. But anyways, let's get back to the main issue. It's really just a show off. She's the kind of woman that speaks her mind. Now, I feel I was prosecuted and punished and that my rights and freedoms were violated to the point where I felt discriminated. Then how is it that this person dares tell me I am privileged? The problem we face is that in society there is so much hate, so much confusion, and so many people in positions that they are not fit to hold. For anyone to become upset or insulted over modern day slavery, the words is pure insanity on their part. A show of their limited intellect and their psychological scarring due to misunderstanding and lack of self-esteem. Now, let's leave that for another column. The point here is that we are all of all colors modern day slaves. We are led to believe that we have choices, that we have freedoms, and that we have rights. In reality, we are all slaves to our demise. Try not going to work for a month. See how that affects your rights and freedom. Okay, this was just straight up rambling after a while. I really don't know what she was trying to say here, but I'll try and break down the thought process. I think she meant that we're all slaves to the system, employers, and the government, and they ultimately control what we say and do, even if they say we can say and do anything. I think that's about right. Now back to slavery and color. Yay. First and foremost, slavery is not a white-black issue. In today's modern world, slavery in the traditional sense is still practiced. Places like Saudi Arabia, some of the South Pacific countries, and in Africa itself. And then why are we celebrating Black History Month in Canada? Okay, so she's not entirely wrong about this. The point of Black History Month isn't to be like, hey, there's still slavery going on, elsewhere, so let's forget the slavery that has happened. No. So I really don't know what the ultimate point of this was. Just because other places are still practicing slavery, it doesn't mean we should forget the slavery that has happened. And Canada is essentially trying to take ownership, as well as America as a whole, to be, self-aware so we don't forget. The old saying, those who those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. But the only way you can learn is if you continue to teach the next generation about the history that happened. Otherwise, they will forget and they will repeat. We are so hung up on North American history and the historical trafficking of primarily African descendants that we have lost sense of time and period. Back in those days, society was very different. Today, we have come a long way. Even though slavery is practiced across the planet, we do not have other nations' race history in Canada. So this part, Black History Month, is predominantly about American Black history. You might see other nations from Africa and whatnot thrown into the mix, but it's actually predominantly supposed to be about Black American history. Now, I'm pretty sure I already mentioned this in the top of the video, but Black history in America and the descendants from the American Black people has been erased because of slavery. They don't have the African roots to look back on, so they have to create a brand new history, which is in turn is American history or American Black history. It is North American history, American Canadian history. It is not a different nation. It is this nation's history. There's no reason to show the other nation's slavery because we're talking about our country's history. And this is a huge part of it. Are we, by celebrating in segregation, not only reminding everyone of a very dark part in North American history, also, we are not in the name of equality showcasing prejudice? If this is so, then why is it that we continue to do it? Could it be a political attempt to fool people? I say this because if we acknowledge our differences between all races, is that not prejudice in itself? Lisa, edit this. Also, it's so you don't forget. How many times do I have to say that? It's so your children don't forget. It's so your grandchildren don't forget. It's so your great-great-great-grandchildren also don't forget. Yes, it is a dark time in American history, but that is why you have to keep looking at it, because of how disgustingly dark it actually was. You have to keep looking at it because your fear of it, your inability to look at it, will make sure you repeat it again because you aren't willing to learn about it. Why should the government have special programs for some races, almost excluding others as deeming this program exclusive to one race? Special Black business programs, special Black business loans. Now, to add more interest to this intellectual conundrum, when we speak of black and white, there are many shades of white, there are many shades of brown, yellow, red, black, and so on. As well, there is prejudice within the color spectrum. Then the question remains, how are we truly to express our equality when it comes to color differences? Is it beneficial for equality to be demanded by honoring indifferences? That was a lot. Here's what I'll tell you instead of being scared or angry. Go and learn. Go and learn about Black history and how we got here, because I don't think you've done enough research into this. You are clearly speaking from a place of emotional state. Logically, the only way you can have what you want is by understanding the plight of the others. There is no way to just be it perfectly. You can't just say, hey, well, we've already learned it, so we don't need to learn any more of it. Like, can we be done? We've learned it already. It doesn't really work like that. People don't work like that. There was a guy, his name's Brian something. I'll try and put this picture up on the screen. Anywho, he befriended a KKK leader, brought him into his house, met his wife and his kids. He himself went to the KKK rallies, became friends with that leader as well as many other members, and met some of their friends and some of their families.
How can you hate me when you don't even know me? They've never had an answer that they can come up with that justifies how they can hate me.
He was able to convert other KKK members out of the Klan due to the fact that they actually got to meet and know him. That's the only way you can actually get rid of this stuff. It is to go and meet the people, sit down and break bread with them, and actually spend the time dedicated to understanding who and what they've been through. Understand the people. I would love for it to just, really just be no need for specific Black History Month. But we can't allow people to forget. And unfortunately, you're sort of the example why you can't be allowed to forget, because you don't even understand what your privilege is simply because you had to work hard. Nobody said why people didn't have to work hard or don't have to work hard to get the jobs that they wanted. But you didn't have to work hard and also be a Black woman, which would make you have to work a bit harder. What if it was White History Month? Wow. Alright, she really has no idea that like every month is White History Month. It's just the darker side of white history. But it's still the same. The other 11 months are positive White History Month. Would that not be seen as prejudice? The argument is, well, the rest of the year is White History Month. Well, no, because history in general never had color. Just episodes of history makes reference to the many conflicts and joint efforts of all color. Much like during the World War, soldiers of all races and colors fought for our freedom. They sacrificed without thought or division based on color. Okay, so she is aware that the rest of the year is White History Month. But obviously there's no color in history, but we're not looking at history, we're looking at specific races' history, which in turn will make us focus on one color. Anyways, on top of that, she talks about the fact that the soldiers of all races, that's not even like that there was no issue among them. That's not even true. Alright, Black soldiers did get treated way differently during the World Wars. In fact, they were treated better by the French in a lot of circumstances than they were by the Americans, to the point where some of them left and went to France with the French because they were just being treated better. It scares me that in this modern society, we have people that would dare support such division by celebrating differences of color. I support Afro-Canadian contributions to this great nation. I do not support the Black History Month statement any more than white privilege, as both statements lack understanding and the intellect of the meaning of its intent. God made us in his image, an image that is not superficial, but one derived from one heart, one love. Even we can't ever be equal as long as we allow color to divide us. I mean, she's not wrong about the color division part, but if you support Afro-Canadian contributions to the great nation, I hope you know that that's what we celebrate during Black History Month. It's Afro-Canadian contributions to this great nation. So I don't understand how you support that, but you are just kind of lost on everything else. Also, she keeps bringing up intellect and intent and whatnot, but she really doesn't understand what white privilege is even to start with, or what Black History Month is even about. It's funny that both these statements seem to be from a place where she's being brought down, when white privilege, as I've already stated, just means that you have the privilege to not be prejudged. And you can kind of get away with things that other Black people would be a little bit more judged harshly on if they tried to get away with. Anyways, I said this before, I don't think this woman is racist. I do think she's just lacking a lot of information. I'd love to see this woman's supposed multicultural friends and what they have to say about this, because I think she could benefit from actually sitting down and actually listening to people. I wonder if she still will have these friends after this, but, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like, comment, and subscribe, and come back for more shenanigans.